They thought he was just another man in a hoodie, slipping into Manhattan's most glamorous dealership with the tired shuffle of someone out of place. But when the truth came crashing down, every smirk, every dismissal, every cruel word would return like a blade, and the lesson would change Hudson Luxury Motors forever. If stories of respect, redemption, and healing touch your heart, please subscribe so you can journey with us to the very last chapter. Marcus Bennett guided his aging SUV into the underground garage of Hudson Luxury Motors on 11th Avenue. The vehicle groaned with each turn, its once glossy paint now dulled by years of city grit. For Marcus, the battered truck wasn't camouflage, it was truth. He had driven it through storms, through silent nights when the weight of his empire pressed so heavily that only the hum of the road kept him sane. Today, though, it was a test. Marcus was the newly minted owner of Hudson Luxury Motors, acquired through Bennett Capital's latest expansion. Yet he wore no suit, carried no air of authority. His hoodie was faded, his sneakers scuffed, his baseball cap pulled low. He wanted to see the truth of his people, unfiltered by title or reputation. Inside, the dealership gleamed like a cathedral to wealth. Chandeliers glittered above polished marble, luxury cars lined up like artwork. Bentleys, Aston Martins, Lamborghinis, all positioned to dazzle the eye. Sales associates moved like dancers in tailored suits, their smiles wide, their voices trained to flatter. Marcus moved toward the reception desk. The young man behind it glanced at him, then at his hoodie, then down again at his screen. No greeting, no offer of help. Marcus let the silence hang, studying the subtle dismissal. "Excuse me," he said gently. "I was hoping to look at some cars." The receptionist's eyes flickered with unease. But before he could answer, a woman in her mid-40s strode across the floor. Victoria Hayes, dealership manager, sharp-eyed, sharply dressed. Her heels clicked with the authority of 2 decades spent carving out her domain. "Sir," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "Hudson specializes in premium vehicles. Perhaps I could recommend a certified pre-owned lot in Brooklyn more suited to your budget?" The words sliced cleanly, polite on the surface, contempt underneath. Marcus studied her. He noted the way her staff shifted, some stifling smirks, others stiff with unease. Already, he saw it. The culture he feared. A system trained to measure worth by appearances. "And what makes you think I can't afford one of these?" Marcus asked softly. Victoria's smile tightened. "I've been in this business 20 years. I know who's serious and who isn't. No offense, sir. It's just efficiency." He said nothing. He simply watched as 2 junior salesmen, emboldened by her tone, turned their backs on him to laugh quietly with each other. Another associate glanced at his hoodie and redirected her attention to a couple dressed in Armani who had just stepped in. Marcus let the silence work. He wanted to see how far the arrogance reached. He wanted to watch the infection spread, how a single sneer from a manager could ripple through an entire staff. But the sting was real. Not for himself, he could endure insult, but for the dozens of invisible customers who must have walked in before him, seeking dignity, only to leave humiliated. Victoria tilted her head, her voice honeyed with condescension. "Why don't I fetch you a list of our lower-cost inventory? Saves us both time." Marcus inhaled, steady. The urge to reveal his identity surged, but he pressed it down. The showroom floor was theater. The reckoning would come in a place where no mask could hide. He let his eyes meet hers, calm, unflinching. "I'll wait," he said simply. And with that, he stepped aside, letting her drown in her own assumptions while he studied every gesture, every snicker, every flicker of disdain in the room. The stage was set. The next act would not be in whispers, but in a boardroom where truth could not be dodged. The quiet after an insult is never empty. It's crowded with the meanings people think you won't catch. Marcus felt that crowded quiet gather around him like fog as Victoria Hayes returned with a clipped smile and a tablet hugged to her chest. "I've prepared a short list," she said, tapping the screen. "Reliable, low maintenance, sensible. A certified Lexus, perhaps a Honda Accord. Brooklyn has several lots that can move quickly on financing." He looked at the tablet, not the cars. "You prepared this without asking what I wanted." "I saved you time," she replied, professional brightness sharpening into something cold. "And I saved us time." Marcus's gaze stayed level. "What convinces you I can't buy from this showroom?" Her answer came swiftly, too well-worn to be spontaneous. 20 years in the business, patterns, posture, shoes, how someone speaks to the receptionist. It's not personal, just efficient triage. The two junior associates nearby pretended to reorganize brochures, ears cocked toward the exchange. The receptionist, who had been avoiding eye contact since he walked in, typed harder, as if keystrokes could drown out embarrassment. Marcus let a small pause fall, not a theatrical silence. Just enough space to let her hear what she'd said. "Your triage," he said, "assumes the patient before you is an inconvenience." "It assumes we prioritize genuine buyers," she countered. "This is Manhattan. We see everything. Tourists looking for selfies, dreamers who want to sit in a Bentley once in their lives, influencers fishing for content. If I entertain each fantasy, I lose a real client." "And your certainty," Marcus asked softly, "has never been wrong?" For the first time, her eyes flickered. She recovered quickly. "Rarely." He glanced around the immaculate hall of glass and metal. "Then rareness is your margin of error. In a place that sells precision, that's a pretty imprecise way to meet a human being." A senior salesman drifted closer, voice low. "Sir, we do have a pre-owned floor. Great vehicles, outstanding warranty. I can print the inventory." "Thank you," Marcus said, not unkindly. "I'm still deciding what I'm looking for." He wasn't here to trade quips. He was here to watch culture behave in its natural habitat. He watched the way one employee mirrored another's posture within seconds, the way the champagne tray veered away from him as if guided by an unseen algorithm, the way a laugh 3 displays down was shaped to flatter a man with a gold watch. Behavior taught itself in rooms like this. "May I ask one more thing?" Marcus said, turning back to Victoria. "When you say you've been in the business 20 years, what does that mean here, at Hudson, on a Tuesday afternoon?" Her chin lifted. "It means I protect the brand. We are known for exclusivity. Not every door is for everyone." Something in the words had the tightness of a locked jaw. He heard the muscle ache behind it, the strain of a story she wasn't telling. "Exclusivity," Marcus repeated, "isn't a substitute for judgment." "It's how you survive," she said. The light from the skylight etched sharp lines along her cheekbones. "Once I lost a 7-figure deal because a promising walk-in never returned. I swore I'd stop letting hope waste minutes. Here, minutes are expensive." The admission wasn't a confession, but it was human. Old humiliation. Lacquered over with policy. He filed it away, not to weaponize later, but to remember what fear makes people defend. "And your team?" Marcus asked. "You train them to see what you see." "They are efficient," she said. "They know our clients." He could have argued the definition of our clients. He could have pointed at the street and said, "Manhattan is a revolving door of stories. The city does not annotate wealth on the face." Instead, he let his attention wander across the floor to a young couple in worn coats, lingering by a Continental with the reverence of museum-goers. No one approached them. Marcus turned back. "Print your list," he said gently. "Then please call the person who can make decisions about culture." Her composure hardened. "Our senior appointments are scheduled through me. The owner does not take unscheduled requests." Marcus's eyes did not change. "Schedule it," he said. "Today." She gave the smallest of laughs, the kind reserved for someone who has already decided you are background noise. "That isn't how we operate." The phrase landed like policy carved in marble. That isn't how we operate. He heard what it really meant. That isn't how we permit people like you to exist in our narrative. He could feel the room waiting for him to flare, to argue, to plead. He offered none of it. Calm was a room of its own, and he lived there when he chose. "I'll wait," he said again, voice mild. "For what?" she asked. "For the right room," he said. "The one with a table and chairs and all of us sitting where we can hear ourselves. This floor is beautiful, but it amplifies the wrong things." A stray draft slipped under the doors and nudged a paper on the reception desk. Somewhere, a V-12 rolled its throaty whisper as a technician tested it in a distant bay. The world kept moving. Victoria's smile returned, fixed and elegant. "I'll see what I can do." He nodded once, then stepped aside to let the afternoon unfold. He did not trail after salespeople or hover near price placards. He watched. He noted every instance of attention redirected from the modestly dressed to the loudly adorned. He kept count, literally, in his head, each time a staff member turned away from a question that sounded unsophisticated. He watched a teenager press his face to a glass panel and fog it with awe. A salesman shooed him back with 2 fingers and a smile that said, "Don't touch, not welcome." The receptionist whispered to a colleague, "He asked for the owner." "Which?" The colleague smothered a laugh. "One?" "The one we don't have time for," the receptionist said, and the two of them dissolved into the low, hissing giggle of people who confuse proximity to luxury with ownership of it. Marcus's anger did not rise. Anger would be too simple. What rose instead was a clean, bracing resolve like winter air that wakes every nerve. Resolve respected time. It preferred the right blow, delivered once. "Sir?" A different voice now, young, unsure. Jake, the newest on the floor, eyes bright with eagerness and fear. Can I get you anything while you wait? Coffee? Water?" Marcus considered him. The instinct to do better, even while swimming in the wrong current, is not nothing. "Water, please," he said. "And tell me something, Jake. In training, how do they tell you to greet a stranger?" Jake's glance flicked to Victoria, then back. "We're taught to look for signals." "What signals?" Jake swallowed. "Wardrobe, watch, what they drove up in. It's to focus our time." "How does it feel to greet a signal instead of a person?" Jake looked at his shoes. "Efficient," he said, then quieter. "Empty." Marcus nodded. "You'll help put a glass in the right room later," he said gently. "One with a table and chairs." Jake didn't understand, not fully, but something in the reassurance loosened his shoulders. He went for the water. When he returned, he held the glass with both hands, careful not to spill. "Here you go, sir." "Thank you, Jake." Victoria reappeared with a printout clipped to a polished silver board, like a menu at an expensive restaurant. "Brooklyn inventory," she announced. "You'll find a number of vehicles that match your assumptions," Marcus finished, his tone mild enough to pass for courtesy. He accepted the board, scanned it for a beat, then set it gently on the reception counter. "Schedule the room," he said again. She opened her mouth, habit ready to roll off her tongue, but something in his stillness made her pause. She didn't agree. She didn't refuse. She pivoted away on precise heels and spoke in low tones to the receptionist, who nodded and began tapping. The hours between a wrong moment and a right room are where a company shows you who it is. Marcus occupied those hours with attention. He watched a celebrity handler breeze in, sunglasses indoors, voice a little too loud. The staff flocked like birds. He watched a construction foreman with dust still clinging to his boots stand alone by a flying spur, tracing the grill's curve with his eyes and not his hand. No one greeted him. Marcus stepped over and asked, "What draws you to this one?" The man startled, then smiled, then told a small, proud story about a raise, about wanting to show his father that certain dreams could be touched. Marcus listened as if nothing else in the room mattered, because in that moment, nothing did. "Meeting room is available at 3, the receptionist announced at last. "We'll all attend," Marcus said. "Who is we?" Victoria asked. "The people who make and follow rules," he said, "and the ones who suffer them." He did not raise his voice. He set no ultimatum. He merely placed the future in a chair and pointed to it. The floor could keep its choreography. Meaning would be made elsewhere. At 2:58, Marcus stood and smoothed the hoodie that had absorbed so many glances it might as well have been a mirror. He caught his reflection in the glass of a showroom door. Scuffed sneakers, steady eyes, a man untroubled by costumes. He felt the same clean resolve he'd carried in with him, sharper now, honed by witnessing. He walked toward the corridor that led to the conference suite. Jake, hovering awkwardly near the threshold, asked, "Should I come?" "Yes," Marcus said. "Bring whatever you need to hear yourself clearly." Jake blinked at that, then nodded, suddenly serious. The corridor swallowed the hum of the sales floor. Carpet underfoot. Framed photographs on the wall. Press clippings, ribbon cuttings, grins beside engines. Stories the company told itself about excellence. Marcus let his hand brush the frame of one photo without stopping. Stories were malleable. Rooms were tools. People could change if you asked the right question where echoes couldn't rescue them. He reached for the conference door, then paused long enough to let the rest of the team arrive behind him. The choreography giving way to something braver, a conversation that could not be curated by distance. The handle was cool in his palm. He did not think of victory. He thought of alignment. The door opened on the right room. The truth would have to sit down. The conference room at Hudson Luxury Motors was a jewel box of glass and chrome, designed to impress clients with its sweeping view of Manhattan's skyline. But that afternoon, as Marcus Bennett sat at the long mahogany table in his hoodie, the room felt less like a showroom for wealth and more like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. Employees filed in, their chatter thinning to whispers. Jake lingered near the back, clutching a notebook he hadn't dared to open yet. Victoria Hayes entered last, heels slicing the carpet, composure wrapped tightly around her like armor. She chose a seat directly across from Marcus, her expression a practiced balance of politeness and dismissal. "Shall we?" she said crisply. Marcus rested his forearms on the table, fingers interlaced. "Let's." A hush spread as he pulled his phone from his pocket, scrolling deliberately to a contact. He pressed call. The speakerphone filled the room with a dial tone, sharp and invasive in the silence. "Who are you calling?" Victoria asked, irritation under her veneer. "The person who ensures rules means something," Marcus said. On the third ring, a voice answered. "Bennett Capital Legal Division, this is Rachel." Heads turned. The name carried weight. Rachel Cole was not only Marcus's chief legal counsel on Wall Street, she was a woman known for dismantling billion-dollar frauds with the precision of a surgeon. "Rachel," Marcus said evenly. I need confirmation that our acquisition paperwork for Hudson Luxury Motors has been filed with the state. Is the ownership transfer complete? The air tightened. Several employees shifted uncomfortably. Jake's pen slipped from his fingers and clattered against the table. Completed 2 weeks ago, Rachel replied. Bennett Capital holds 100% ownership. Do you want me on site? Marcus glanced up, watching the way Victoria's smile faltered, the way color drained subtly from her cheeks. Not yet, he said. For now, a reminder will suffice. Rachel's voice hardened. Understood. Call if resistance continues. The line went dead. The silence afterward was almost unbearable. Some employees stared at Marcus as though seeing him for the first time. Others darted nervous glances at Victoria. She forced a laugh, brittle as glass. So, you've done your research, congratulations, but ownership doesn't change reality, Mr. She caught herself before finishing the thought. You'll find we've built a system that works. Our clients expect efficiency. Marcus tilted his head. Do they expect contempt? The question landed like a dropped stone. Victoria stiffened. I was protecting the dealership's reputation. We can't entertain every wanderer who stumbles in. This is Manhattan, not a charity drive. Marcus let her words hang in the air. He thought of the receptionist who had avoided eye contact, the salesman who had steered champagne away, the couple in worn coats still wandering the floor unattended. A system, yes, but not one worth defending. This isn't about charity, Marcus said quietly. It's about respect. A system that decides who is worth speaking to and who isn't is not efficiency. It's laziness, disguised as expertise. Murmurs rippled down the table. Jake's eyes widened. He scribbled the words respect versus laziness on his notepad as though afraid they might vanish from memory. Victoria bristled, voice sharpening. If you indulge everyone equally, you'll bankrupt us. You're new to this world. Marcus raised a hand. The gesture wasn't loud, but it was final. Enough! The word reverberated in the room. He looked not at Victoria, but at the employees, young and old, seasoned and new, the ones who had mirrored her behavior without question. I didn't come here for numbers, he said. I came to see culture, and what I saw was a hierarchy built not on service but on judgment. That is not survival. That is rot. No one spoke. The room pulsed with the tension of recognition, some defensive, some quietly ashamed. Victoria broke the silence, her tone clipped. If you're unhappy with how we operate, perhaps you should appoint a new manager. Marcus's eyes locked on hers. Perhaps I will. But before I make any decisions, every one of you will understand why this matters. That's why we're here. That's why I called Rachel. The door opened then, and a junior assistant hurried in, pale with nerves. Mr. Clark is here. Ethan Clark, vice president of Bennett Capital, stepped into the room. Tall, tailored in charcoal gray, his presence carried the weight of Wall Street without needing to say a word. He shook Marcus's hand firmly, then turned to the table. Let me be absolutely clear, Ethan said. His voice cut like steel through the silence. Marcus Bennett is not a customer. He is not a stranger in a hoodie. He is the new owner of Hudson Luxury Motors. From this day forward, he decides the culture, the strategy, the future. Gasps scattered through the room. A senior salesman leaned back hard enough for his chair to creak. Jake's mouth dropped open, pen frozen above paper. Victoria sat very still, her jaw tight, her carefully constructed facade trembling around the edges. Ethan placed a leather folder on the table with a deliberate thud. Ownership contracts, state filings, everything binding. If anyone has doubts, read them. The folder lay untouched. No one dared move. Marcus leaned forward, his voice low but resolute. I asked for a room where truth couldn't hide. This is that room. Now every one of you knows who I am. But remember this. I was in your showroom as a stranger first, and I will not forget how I was treated. The words landed heavier than any legal document. Victoria finally spoke, her voice brittle. I was only trying to save time. Protect the brand. Marcus's gaze held hers, unflinching. Then consider this. If I hadn't been the owner, how many more times would you have done the same? How many people would walk out carrying humiliation instead of keys? The silence was answer enough. Marcus rose, the weight of leadership filling the space around him. This isn't the end of the conversation. It's the beginning. Tomorrow morning, every employee will gather in this room again, and we will decide together whether Hudson will stand for respect or for arrogance. He left the room with Ethan at his side. Behind him, whispers erupted. Fear, confusion, the first stirrings of doubt in a culture that had long mistaken prejudice for professionalism. The conference room emptied and refilled within the hour, as if the building itself inhaled and held its breath. Employees returned to their seats more slowly this time, the choreography of confidence broken. The skyline beyond the glass was the same. Hudson River steel blue, the West Side Highway stippled with headlights. But inside, the air had changed weight. Titles hung lighter. Excuses felt heavier. Marcus Bennett did not take the head of the table. He chose the middle, where his voice would reach without rising and his eyes could meet everyone's without a dais. Ethan Clark remained standing by the window, a silent ledger of legitimacy. Victoria Hayes sat opposite Marcus, posture perfect, hands folded so tightly the diamond on her ring seemed to cut her skin. Before we plan the future, Marcus began, we must agree on the past, specifically what happened in this showroom today and what has been happening for a long time. He looked to the edges of the room. I don't want rehearsed answers. I want the kind that make your throat work. No one moved. Then Jake cleared his voice and stood, the notebook he'd barely used clutched to his side. We were trained to sort, he said, to read signals, to decide, fast, who mattered. Why? Marcus asked, not unkindly. Jake's glance flicked to Victoria and back. Because time is money. Because missing a big client hurts more than missing a small one. He swallowed. Because we were told this is how elite places work. A murmur of assent ran along the table, soft, reluctant honesty. A senior salesman added carefully, our quotas, our bonuses, they favor quick conversions. The system rewards narrowing your focus. Marcus nodded once. Systems produce the behaviors they pay for. He let the sentence sit until its truth stopped being abstract. He turned to Victoria. Your turn. Her jaw flexed, the smallest tremor of a storm under porcelain. We sell to people who expect perfection. They can buy anywhere. If we're not efficient, we die. Last year I lost a 7-figure deal because a walk-in looked promising and vanished. I watched the month's leaderboard fall under my name. I watched New Jersey beat Manhattan, and I promised I would never bleed minutes again. She drew a breath, the polish slipping enough to show the bruise beneath. You call it arrogance. I call it survival. Survival built on humiliation isn't survival, Marcus said softly. It's decay that pays for a while. Her eyes flashed. Easy to say when your name is on the building. Harder to live, he answered. Which is why we'll live it together or not at all. Ethan stepped forward for the first time. Hear the offer underneath the correction, he said to the room. No one gets fired for old training today, but no one keeps old training tomorrow. Silence. Then the smallest release of breath from several throats. Marcus placed both palms on the table. Here is what I witnessed on the floor. A receptionist who couldn't hold a stranger's gaze. Associates who orbited wealth like moths. A champagne tray that avoided the unfashionable as if it might stain the stemware. And a manager who offered me a map to another borough instead of a chair in her office. He didn't look at Victoria when he said it. He looked at everyone. That is not a collection of accidents. That is a culture. He reached into his hoodie pocket, drew out nothing, and placed that emptiness on the table as if it were evidence. But culture is made of choices, and choices can change. He stood then, not to loom but to move, slowly, along the table's length, speaking not to the group as an audience, but to clusters of faces as if he were passing water in a long, dry corridor. To the team who met the celebrity handler faster than they met the construction foreman with dust on his boots, I am not angry at you, I am alerting you. The foreman had a story, and stories drive decisions better than status. To the receptionist, eye contact is not a courtesy, it is a promise. To the senior team, if your quotas can only be met by narrowing your definition of client, then your quotas are starving your pipeline while pretending to feed it. He returned to his seat. We will change the incentives. We will change the habits. We will change the room. Victoria spoke again, quieter now, the blade dulled by the truth's friction. And if change fails, if we open the doors wide and the wrong crowds flood in and the real buyers leave because they feel less special? Marcus considered her carefully, and when he answered, he chose the long road over the clever retort. Exclusivity is not a velvet rope, he said. It's the reliability that when a person entrusts us with a dream, whether it sparkles or it squeaks, we will serve with the same care. The real buyers you're afraid of losing? They become loyal not because others were pushed aside, but because they were treated like people, not trophies. He turned a palm upward. I won't trick you with slogans. This will be harder at first. It will be slower at first. We will talk to people who don't buy, and we will learn from those conversations how to serve the ones who do. Respect multiplies. Arrogance wastes. Ethan opened his leather folder and slid out 2 slim documents. Interim measures while Marcus designs the full plan, he said. 1. A provisional service rubric. Greeting time, listening behaviors, unbiased test drive offers, weighted into bonuses immediately. 2. A hold on any fast-track lists that skip strangers to prioritize whales. A few heads snapped up at bonuses. The room's posture changed by a degree. Small, noticeable. Marcus didn't smile at the reaction. He had expected it. We will also have outside help, he said. You'll meet them next week. They're not coming to shame you. They're coming to show you where the shortcuts have been costing you the most. Victoria folded and unfolded her fingers, the only visible tell of a mind sprinting behind steady eyes. What about brand partnerships, the couture events, the private preview nights? That's how we signal tier. Keep them, Marcus said. But make the signal craft, not contempt. Invite the teacher who loves engines and the nurse who dreams in leather upholstery to look as long as they like. They'll bring the uncle with the fund, the cousin with the company, the neighbor who signs quietly. The pipeline is patient. I intend to be, too. Jake lifted his hand, surprised to hear his own voice carry. What do you need from me? From the newest people? Courage in small units, Marcus said. Say welcome to someone who expects to be ignored. Offer a test drive to the person who doesn't know how to ask. Ask one more question than you used to. And when an older habit tugs at your sleeve, let it tug, and then choose differently. A senior associate who had kept his head down all afternoon cleared his throat. And from leadership? Marcus did not look at Victoria to answer, though the answer included her. From leadership, I need 2 things. First, to model what we're asking. Second, to measure what we model. He tapped the table gently. If your one-on-ones are only about closings, you will manufacture contempt. If they're about service behaviors that lead to closings, you will manufacture pride. The room absorbed it, some faces brightening with the relief of clarity, others tightening with the dread of change. Both were honest. Both could work. Victoria sat straighter, her tone even, her words chosen like stones across a river. You're asking me to unlearn 20 years. I'm asking you to relearn 5 minutes, Marcus said. The first 5 with any person who walks in. You can keep your experience, your instincts about inventory, your sense of timing. Just give me 5 minutes of judgment-free attention at the front of the conversation. If you can't, say so today. A beat. 2. Then a small nod, careful, guarded, but real. I can try 5 minutes, she said. It sounded like trial. It also sounded like hope trying on its first coat in a long time. Ethan checked his watch and closed the folder. Action items, he said crisply. Floor leaders will receive the provisional rubric tonight. Reception will adopt a 2-minute greeting standard with a name exchange for every entrant. Sales will log first contact notes into CRM. No labels about tier permitted. A town hall is scheduled for tomorrow at 9. Marcus rose, and the room rose with him. The right room did its job, he said, half to himself, half to the team. Now the floor gets a second chance. He held the door but didn't leave first. He let the staff file past, each with the faint, rattled look of travelers stepping off a turbulence-heavy flight onto solid ground. When Victoria reached the doorway, he met her eyes. You don't have to like me to lead with me, he said, but you do have to choose people over shortcuts. She held his gaze for a long breath. 5 minutes, she repeated, as if setting a timer only she could hear. Then she went to do the most difficult thing a veteran can do. Start again. Marcus remained a moment, alone with the view and the table and the ghost of the old script settling into the furniture. He imagined the next day's town hall, the questions, the friction, the first evidence of a different reflex. He pictured the champagne tray moving indiscriminately, the receptionist saying a name back to a stranger and meaning it, Jake offering a test drive to his former self in a hoodie. He didn't think about victory. He thought about alignment, of behaviors, measures, and the quiet dignity of a greeting. He turned out the lights. The truth had sat down. Tomorrow, it would learn to stand with them. The morning sun broke over Manhattan like a verdict, slicing through the skyline with steel blue light. By 9 o'clock sharp, the entire staff of Hudson Luxury Motors was assembled in the glass-walled boardroom, high above 11th Avenue. From the outside, the dealership still glittered like a temple of exclusivity, but inside, the people carried the heavy knowledge that the ground beneath them had shifted. Marcus Bennett stood at the head of the table. He wore no suit, no tie, only a dark blazer and open-collared shirt. He had chosen not to armor himself with wealth, but to stand as he had on the showroom floor, a man testing the character of those who claimed to sell luxury. The silence was thick. The staff waited for punishment, perhaps for firings. Instead, Marcus began with a story. Years ago, he said, his voice calm but carrying, I walked into a dealership in Boston. I had just started Bennett Capital. My clothes were worn from the week's travel, my car a hand-me-down sedan. The manager didn't even look me in the eye. He waved me toward the used lot and turned his attention back to a man in a tailored coat. I left that day without saying a word. But I remembered. Not the insult. The pattern. He paused, letting the memory sink into the room. People think arrogance is efficient, but arrogance leaks. That manager never knew I was looking to buy 5 cars for my first executive team. 5. I bought them elsewhere. His loss wasn't just profit. It was reputation. The staff shifted uncomfortably. Even the seasoned salesman avoided his gaze. Marcus tapped the table lightly with his finger. Yesterday, I asked you all to name the culture you've inherited. Today, we name the culture we will build. 3 pillars, not slogans, policies. He walked to the whiteboard and wrote in deliberate strokes, respect, integrity, service. He underlined each word once. Respect means every client is acknowledged within 2 minutes of entry, by name, with eye contact. Integrity means no shortcuts in the CRM, no hidden tiers, no favoritism. Service means quality that doesn't scale down depending on the person standing before you. He capped the marker and turned back to the table. From this day forward, these pillars are how we measure success. Jake, sitting halfway down the table, raised his hand cautiously. How will we know if we're living up to them? Good question, Marcus said, nodding. He opened a folder and slid several sheets down the table. We'll use new scorecards, not just sales numbers, but service metrics. Greeting time, listening behaviors, unbiased test drive offers, every client interaction logged. Your bonuses will reflect not only what you close, but how you treat the person in front of you. A senior salesman frowned. What if the numbers drop? What if this slows us down? Ethan Clark, standing near the window, answered before Marcus could. Then we'll know whether the foundation is real. Fast numbers built on contempt collapse. Solid numbers built on loyalty grow. Which future do you want your name attached to? The salesman looked down, chastened. Marcus leaned forward, his voice quiet but heavy. I'm not naive. Change won't be easy. Some of you will resist. Some may leave. That's fine. Better an empty seat than one filled with disdain. Victoria Hayes finally spoke, her tone clipped but less defiant than before. And what if clients notice the shift? Some come here precisely because of exclusivity. Marcus met her gaze steadily. Then we redefine exclusivity. It's not about velvet ropes, it's about excellence. When a client buys here, they will know they received the highest standard of service possible, no matter who they are. That kind of exclusivity never loses value. He let the words settle. Then he softened his tone. This isn't about shaming the past. It's about choosing a future. The world outside is full of places where judgment wears the mask of efficiency. Hudson will not be one of them. Not while my name is on the papers of ownership. A ripple of energy moved through the room, hesitant but real. Some employees straightened in their chairs. Jake scribbled in his notebook, as if committing the moment to memory. Even a few of the senior staff shifted, uneasy but listening. Marcus glanced at the clock. We begin today. Role-play sessions with the Harvard consultants this afternoon. Tomorrow, new SOPs on greetings and test drives. Next week, we launch the revised CRM protocols. This is not theory. This is practice. He stepped back from the table, his voice steady but warm. I didn't buy Hudson Luxury Motors to add another trophy to my wall. I bought it because I believe respect sells better than arrogance. And I intend to prove it with you, not without you. For the first time, the silence felt different, not fearful, but contemplative. Possibility hummed in the air. As the staff filed out, Jake lingered at the door. He turned back, his voice tentative but sincere. Mr. Bennett, I think we can do this. Marcus smiled faintly. So do I. He remained in the boardroom a moment longer, the skyline blazing behind him, the 3 words glowing on the whiteboard. They weren't just policy, they were a promise. And promises, Marcus knew, were the real currency of trust. The afternoon sun slanted across 11th Avenue, throwing shards of light through the glass facade of Hudson Luxury Motors. Inside, the showroom gleamed as it always had. Polished chrome, spotless marble, a cathedral of exclusivity. But beneath the shine, something restless stirred. Marcus Bennett had spent the morning walking the floor, quietly observing. Staff were trying, he could see that. The receptionist practiced longer eye contact. Jake greeted everyone with the same warmth. Even the older salesman managed polite words for customers who didn't look wealthy. But the effort felt stiff, rehearsed, like actors learning new lines they didn't quite believe yet. Marcus didn't mind. Change was rarely graceful at first. What concerned him more was the undercurrent. Subtle glances, whispered conversations that broke off when he passed, the flicker of resentment in eyes not yet ready to surrender old habits. At 5 o'clock, when the last clients had left and the showroom quieted, Marcus lingered near the operations desk where Jake sat reviewing customer records. Jake's brow furrowed, his finger tracing lines on the CRM screen. "Something wrong?" Marcus asked. Jake hesitated, then lowered his voice. "These files don't match what's in the system. Not proof yet, just a smell. Premium accounts keep slipping sideways. It looks like they've been redirected to another dealership uptown." Marcus leaned closer, scanning the discrepancies. Customer addresses shifted, phone numbers missing, scheduled calls erased. Subtle, almost invisible, except to someone paying attention. "Could be clerical error," Marcus said evenly, though his jaw tightened. "Or it could be something else." Jake swallowed hard. "I didn't want to assume, but it's too consistent to be random." Marcus placed a steady hand on the young man's shoulder. "Thank you for bringing it to me. Keep your eyes open, but don't confront anyone. Not yet." Jake nodded, relief flickering across his face. As Marcus walked back to his office, the unease deepened. He had seen this before, in boardrooms where sabotage disguised itself as efficiency, in corporations where culture wars were fought not in speeches, but in data quietly rearranged. Victoria Hayes hadn't spoken much since the town hall. She had nodded, even promised 5 minutes of respect. But Marcus knew compliance without conviction was only camouflage. That evening, when most of the staff had gone, Marcus stood at his office window overlooking the river. The city shimmered in twilight, alive with traffic and possibility. Yet he felt the dealership pulsing beneath him like a fault line. Ethan Clark entered, loosening his tie. "You look like a man waiting for an earthquake." Marcus gestured toward the city. "Maybe it's already begun. Small tremors, a file here, a call there, enough to make the foundation shift." Ethan studied him. "You think Hayes?" "I think sabotage doesn't announce itself. It hides until the damage is irreversible." Marcus turned back to the skyline. "But I won't move on suspicion alone. If there's rot here, I'll let it surface in the open. Everyone will see it for what it is." Ethan nodded. "And when it does, then we deal with it. Not quietly, not in corners, but where every voice can hear the truth." The office fell silent, the city's hum filling the space. Marcus knew the culture war had entered its next phase. Training sessions and policies would not be enough. Trust had to be tested, and betrayal had to be revealed. He looked once more at the river's silver gleam. "Respect can't survive in shadows," he murmured. "So, we'll bring the shadows into the light." The next Monday morning, the boardroom of Hudson Luxury Motors felt less like a meeting space and more like a laboratory. Folders lay neatly at every seat, filled with charts and timetables stamped with the seal of Harvard Business School's executive education. The employees filed in hesitantly, some clutching coffee cups like shields. Marcus Bennett stood at the whiteboard, blazer off, sleeves rolled. He didn't write anything new, the 3 pillars from last week, respect, integrity, service, still glowed faintly, ghost-like. Instead, he tapped the board lightly with the capped marker. "We've named the pillars," Marcus began, his voice steady but carrying. Now we turn them into muscle. Culture doesn't shift with slogans. It shifts when systems, training, and incentives line up behind the words. He gestured to Ethan Clark, who handed out new scorecards. Each page was a grid: greeting time, listening behaviors, test drive offers, follow-up notes. Next to each was a column for observed, scored, and improved. "You won't be graded only on closings anymore," Marcus said. "You'll be graded on how you treat the person in front of you, whether they buy or not. Respect is measurable, and we're going to measure it." A ripple of unease moved across the table. A senior salesman muttered, "This isn't what luxury dealerships do." Marcus didn't flinch. "It is what Hudson will do, because luxury is not about exclusion. It's about excellence. If you can't deliver excellence to a stranger in a hoodie, you don't deserve the commission from a man in a suit." Jake raised his hand, his voice cautious but steady. "How will we practice this? It feels new, and I don't want to mess it up." "Good," Marcus said, nodding. "Admitting what you don't know is the first step." He flipped open his binder. "This afternoon, our consultants from Harvard will lead role-play sessions. Real scenarios, customers who look ordinary but aren't, customers who walk in with hesitation, customers who waste your time. You'll learn not just to sell, but to serve." He paced slowly, his voice firm. "We'll also overhaul the CRM. From now on, no labels like tier or time waster. Every client file logs 3 things: how they were greeted, what they were offered, and what they told you. That's it. No prejudgment." Victoria Hayes finally spoke, her voice sharp, though not as defiant as before. "And when that slows us down? What happens when a millionaire walks in and has to wait behind someone who will never buy?" Marcus met her gaze. "Then that millionaire learns that Hudson treats every client with dignity, and believe me, he'll respect us more for it." He paused, letting his words weigh down the room. "Speed is not the enemy. Contempt is." Ethan stepped forward, his tone cool but precise. "We've seen the data. Companies that prioritize inclusivity outperform their competitors in loyalty. Customers come back, they bring referrals, they trust, and trust is worth more than a rushed sale." Victoria said nothing, but her lips pressed thin. Marcus turned to the group again. "Some of you fear this will cost profit. Let me be clear. The only profit worth keeping is the kind built on integrity. If you cheat the culture, you're cheating the future of this dealership. And you're cheating yourselves." He held up one of the scorecards. "This is not punishment. It's protection. For you, for our clients, for the reputation of Hudson. Respect isn't charity, it's strategy." The room grew quiet. Slowly, Jake nodded, then another junior associate. Even the receptionist, usually timid, leaned forward with a look of relief. Marcus softened his tone. "You don't have to be perfect tomorrow. You have to show up, to try. To unlearn what you've been taught and relearn what luxury should mean." He let the silence stretch before closing. "This is the blueprint. Respect, integrity, service, operationalized into action. Follow it, and Hudson becomes more than a showroom. It becomes a promise." As the meeting adjourned, some employees left with hesitation, others with a spark of hope. But one thing was clear. The culture of Hudson was no longer drifting. It had a map, a structure, a spine. And Marcus knew. With a blueprint this clear, the next cracks of sabotage would stand out like neon in the dark. The first weeks of training felt awkward, like learning to walk in new shoes. The Harvard consultants pushed the staff into role plays, forcing them to greet interns dressed in hoodies, retirees in sweatpants, even actors pretending to be flustered parents with children in tow. Some employees stumbled, others sighed with impatience, but slowly, gradually, the habits began to shift. It was on a brisk March afternoon that the real test arrived. The glass doors opened, and a man stepped inside. His bomber jacket was cracked from years of wear, his jeans faded, his boots scuffed by long miles. A baseball cap shadowed his lined face. He didn't look like the type who would fit easily among Bentleys and Lamborghinis under chandeliers. The receptionist straightened. She had been practicing, and this was her moment. "Welcome to Hudson Luxury Motors, sir. May I have your name?" The man's voice was quiet but firm. "James Whitaker. I'd like to see the Bentley Continental." For a heartbeat, the old reflex threatened. One of the senior salesmen shifted uncomfortably, ready to steer him toward pre-owned sedans. But before anyone could speak, Marcus Bennett stepped from his office, his voice calm but clear. "My name is Marcus," he said, approaching with a steady smile. "I'm the owner here. Colonel Whitaker, is it? We'd be honored to show you the Continental." The room froze. The man blinked in surprise. "The owner?" "Yes," Marcus said simply. "And every person who walks through these doors deserves our best." He guided the colonel to the center of the showroom, where the deep navy Bentley Continental shimmered under soft lights. Marcus opened the door, the leather interior catching the glow. "Please, have a seat. This isn't just a car, it's a promise of comfort." Colonel Whitaker ran his hand across the quilted leather, his expression softening. "Beautiful," he murmured. "I've dreamed of this car for years." He hesitated, lifting the brim of his cap just enough for Marcus to see the tired kindness in his eyes. "My wife starts radiation next month," he said softly. "I promised her our drives would be quiet and gentle. This isn't about showing off. It's about giving her peace between hospital lights." The words fell heavy in the showroom. Employees who had once judged by appearance felt their throats tighten. Even Victoria Hayes, standing rigid near the back, could not disguise the flicker of unease in her eyes. Marcus lowered his voice with respect. "Then this car will carry not just journeys, but healing. Let's make sure it's yours." Within the hour, the papers were signed. Colonel Whitaker, a man in worn boots, drove away in a Bentley worth more than most New York apartments, his wife's comfort secured by his quiet determination. As the glass doors closed behind him, the staff remained motionless, stunned. Jake was the first to speak. We almost sent him away." Marcus turned to face them all. His tone was steady, but the weight of his words pressed into every heart. "This is why we change. You cannot see a person's worth in their shoes, their jacket, or the car they drove in. Respect isn't wasted time. It's the reason we exist." A silence followed, not empty but full of shame, full of recognition, full of possibility. The staff had seen a living example, not a lecture. The young receptionist whispered, almost to herself, "He bought because we treated him with respect first." "Exactly," Marcus said. "Respect sells better than arrogance. Always." Victoria's lips tightened into a bloodless line, but she said nothing. The battle within her was visible, the instinct to dismiss still alive, but the proof of her failure undeniable. For Marcus, the moment was not triumph, but confirmation. The culture was shifting, one story at a time. He looked around the showroom and saw something new. Employees no longer afraid of wasted time, but afraid of missing the humanity in front of them. And for the first time, he believed Hudson Luxury Motors had begun to shed its old skin. Rain streaked down the tall windows of Hudson Luxury Motors, painting blurred silver lines across the view of 11th Avenue. Inside, the air was charged, the kind of tension that made even footsteps sound louder. Employees gathered in the boardroom once more, their whispers subdued. They knew something was coming, something final. Marcus Bennett stood at the head of the table, a folder in his hand. Ethan Clark leaned against the glass wall, arms folded, his presence sharp as a blade. Victoria Hayes sat near the center, her navy suit as impeccable as ever, her diamond earrings catching the sterile light. Yet beneath the polish, her posture was taut, like a rope pulled too tight. Marcus opened the folder and spread out several printed sheets. On the wall screen, he projected CRM activity logs, rows of dates, client names, and timestamps. These, Marcus began, his voice steady but clear, are internal records from the past month. They show client data, phone numbers, purchase histories, contact notes, mysteriously vanishing or being rerouted to another dealership uptown. A ripple of unease swept the table. Jake leaned forward, his face pale. Marcus continued. At first, we thought it was clerical error. Then we saw the pattern. Premium accounts, and only premium accounts, disappearing from our system. Always between 11 at night and 2 in the morning. He tapped the screen, and every transfer was tied to one login. His eyes lifted and locked on Victoria. Yours. Gasps filled the room. The receptionist covered her mouth. A senior salesman muttered, "My God." Victoria's face drained, but she forced a brittle laugh. "That's ridiculous. Anyone could have spoofed my login. This proves nothing." Marcus's expression didn't change. "We traced the IP address straight to your office computer, and if that's not enough..." He pressed a button. Security footage flickered onto the screen. Victoria in her office, midnight, fingers flying across her keyboard as the monitor glowed. The silence was devastating. Victoria's voice cracked, desperate now. "You don't understand. I built this place. Without me, Hudson would have collapsed years ago. I kept us profitable. I made us elite. And then you waltz in with your lofty ideals, ready to throw it all away." She slammed her palm on the table, eyes flashing. "Exclusivity is survival. The moment we start treating everyone the same, we drown in wasted hours. That's why I did it. To protect us." Marcus leaned forward, his voice low but cutting. "No. You did it to protect yourself. To cling to power by feeding off backroom deals and stolen clients. That isn't protection. It's betrayal." Her jaw clenched, but the fight in her eyes wavered. Jake rose to his feet, voice trembling but clear. "I saw the discrepancies. I brought them to Mr. Bennett. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, but you trained us to dismiss people. And now you've dismissed the very principles we needed most." Victoria spun toward him, fury breaking through her composure. "Ungrateful child!" "Enough!" Marcus's voice boomed, firm as stone. The room fell silent. He looked around the table, meeting every gaze. Integrity is not optional. Without it, this dealership is nothing but glass and steel filled with arrogance. Victoria Hayes has violated that integrity. Effective immediately, she is suspended. A full investigation will follow, and if necessary, legal action. Victoria's face blanched, her veneer of control shattered. She pushed back her chair sharply, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "You'll regret this, Bennett. Idealism doesn't pay bills. Exclusivity does. When your fantasy fails, you'll beg for me back." Marcus stood tall, unshaken. "Exclusivity without respect is rot, and rot cannot lead." She faltered, searching for a retort, but none came. With her head held high but her eyes hollow, she stormed out of the boardroom. The door slammed shut behind her. For a moment, no one breathed. Then, slowly, the employees exhaled as though a weight had been lifted. Marcus placed the folder on the table. "Her choices are her own.
but they don't define us.
What defines us is what we do next, whether we commit to respect, integrity, and service, or slide back into arrogance. Jake nodded, his eyes steady. I choose respect. One by one, others nodded too. Even the older staff, once loyal to Victoria, lowered their heads in silent agreement. Marcus allowed himself a faint smile. Then Hudson has a future. He underlined one word on the whiteboard: integrity. Because without this, he said, everything else collapses. The room was silent, but the silence felt different now. Lighter, hopeful, unchained. Spring in Manhattan has a way of feeling like a second chance. After months of cold gray skies, the city suddenly blooms. Cherry blossoms bursting pink along Riverside Drive, tulips braving the winds near Union Square, and the Hudson River glittering beneath a brighter sun. It was in this season of renewal that Hudson Luxury Motors itself seemed reborn. 3 months had passed since the stormy meeting that ended Victoria Hayes's reign. The dealership, once a fortress of glass polished to reflect only the wealthiest clients, was no longer a house of cold judgment. The building remained the same: sleek walls, chrome accents, chandeliers above, but the air within had changed. Where there had once been tension and suspicion, now there was a warmth that even customers could feel the moment they stepped inside. On a Tuesday morning, Marcus Bennett arrived quietly, as he often did. He parked his unassuming SUV a block away, choosing once again not to enter as the owner, but simply as a man observing the world he had helped transform. As he walked through the showroom doors, he caught the receptionist rising immediately to greet a delivery driver who had wandered in, confused about directions. Instead of brushing him off, she offered him water and checked his address. Marcus smiled faintly. That's respect, he thought. That's how change takes root, not in speeches, but in small habits. Across the showroom, Jake was seated with a young couple, school teachers from Queens. They wore jeans and carried backpacks still stuffed with lesson plans. Months earlier, they would have been directed to the used car section with polite dismissal. Now, Jake leaned in, listening intently as they explained they were saving for their first new car, a modest Audi A4. He didn't rush them, didn't upsell them, didn't judge them. Instead, he explained financing options step by step, pausing whenever they looked unsure. When Marcus passed by, he overheard the woman whisper, "I can't believe they're treating us like we belong here." "You do belong here," Jake said without hesitation. It was in that single sentence that Marcus felt the deepest satisfaction. Later that afternoon, a retired doorman from the Bronx walked in with his granddaughter. His cap was frayed, his shoes worn, but his eyes lit up as he gazed at a Mercedes coupe near the window. Instead of dismissing him, one of the senior salesmen, once the most skeptical of Marcus's reforms, approached with a steady hand on the man's shoulder and said, "Take your time. Let's sit inside together." The old man's granddaughter whispered, "Abuelo, are they really going to let us?" Marcus saw the salesman crouch, his tone gentle. "Here, young lady, why don't you open the door for him? Every car here is waiting for someone with a story." The transformation was not cosmetic. It was cultural. Ethan Clark, watching from the second-floor balcony, joined Marcus near the glass railing. His tie was loosened, his eyes sharp but proud. "Look at them," he said quietly. "It doesn't feel forced anymore." "No," Marcus agreed. "They're not acting. They're believing." The two men watched as the receptionist handed crayons and coloring sheets to a customer's child. In another corner, an older salesman knelt beside a young man in a wheelchair, adjusting the seat controls so he could fit comfortably. The client's smile was wide, and for once, the salesman's smile was genuine too. "This," Marcus said, is what luxury was meant to be. Not velvet ropes, not dismissive glances, but dignity wrapped in excellence. On the far wall of the boardroom, the three words, respect, integrity, service, remained written in bold. Marcus had resisted writing them again and again in every meeting. Instead, he had chosen to let actions speak louder. Now those words weren't slogans anymore. They were habits. But the shadow of the past still lingered. Victoria Hayes's name had not been erased. New employees were told her story during orientation, not as gossip, but as a lesson. She believed exclusivity meant contempt, Ethan explained to each class of recruits. She was wrong. Exclusivity means excellence. The tale became Hudson's cautionary parable, a reminder of what happens when profit swallows principle. One afternoon, Jake hurried up to Marcus, his face lit with boyish pride. "Mr. Bennett," he said, "I just closed a deal, but it's not the sale that I'm proud of." "Oh," Marcus asked, intrigued. Jake held out a handwritten note from his client. The words were simple. "Thank you for treating me like family. This was the first time I didn't feel small in a luxury showroom." Marcus read it twice, then looked up at the young salesman. "That note is worth more than the sale. That's loyalty. That's legacy." As evening fell, the dealership prepared to close. Employees gathered naturally near the glass facade, sunlight spilling gold across the marble floor. Marcus turned to them, his expression both proud and earnest. "3 months ago, we were divided. Some of you doubted if this culture could survive. Some of you feared profit would vanish. And yet, here we are, sales steady, loyalty rising, clients returning with friends and family. Not because of the cars, but because of you." He looked around the circle, meeting each gaze. Respect, integrity, service. Those words only live if you live them. Today, you have. And tomorrow, you must again. The employees nodded, some smiling, some misty-eyed. Even the older skeptics seemed lighter, as though a burden had finally lifted. Jake raised his voice. "We're not just selling cars anymore, are we?" Marcus shook his head. "No, we're selling trust. And trust is priceless." The staff dispersed slowly, leaving Marcus and Ethan alone in the fading light. Ethan studied his friend, then asked, "Do you ever regret buying this place? You could have just collected the profits and walked away." Marcus smiled faintly, watching as a young man in worn sneakers lingered outside the glass, admiring a car. One of the sales staff opened the door to invite him in. The young man hesitated, then stepped inside with a grin. "No," Marcus said. "I didn't buy Hudson to sell cars. I bought it to sell respect. And that's a business that never goes out of style." The last rays of sun lit the dealership in warm gold, as if blessing its rebirth. For Marcus, the journey had not been about exposing arrogance or punishing betrayal, but about proving a truth he had carried for years. The greatest luxury is dignity. And now, Hudson Luxury Motors finally reflected it. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of Marcus Bennett's journey, from disguise and humiliation to truth, justice, and a culture reborn. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and join us for more tales of respect, healing, and second chances. Together, let's keep spreading hope.